We are speaking with the one and only Brian Ritchie of the band Violent Femmes, celebrating 30 years of Why Do Birds Sing? And as we say here in Montreal, bonjour, Brian. How are you?
Bonjour, yes, very good. And 40 years of the band. So,
That is true.
yeah, 30 years of that album. So we were already veterans when we made it, even though it sounds like 30 years is a long time.
Yeah, well, in fact, talk to me about that era because, when we get to 91, 92, we all talk about how Nirvana changed everything. They killed the hair metal stuff, it killed pop records. Did it affect Violent Femmes at all, or were you still just doing what you do?
Well, we affected them because when we met Nirvana,
Right.
they were opening up for us on our Australian, Australian tour, which was their first time in Australia, but we were already quite established there. But it was a weird situation because the promoter in Australia sent me this cassette of Nevermind. And so this is the band we want to have open your tour. And I listened to it and I said, I still remember, I said, this is good. They sound kind of like the Monkees. And and they said, well, okay. So that was approved for them to open up for us on the tour. But in the interim, between the time that I got that advanced cassette and the time that the tour actually happened, they had become the biggest band in the world. So here we have the biggest band in the world opening up for us, even though we were big, they were still the biggest band in the world. So we said, hey, do you guys want to swap the bill around? No way. They didn't want to because they knew that we were a better live band.
Right.
So, and they respected us. So it was a good way to meet them. And then later on, we did tour in Europe with them, and we were the clear support because they had expanded even further at that point. So did they affect us? They did because between Green Day,
Great band.
Nirvana, and some of these other bands, who let's face it, they all like the Femmes, even Blink 182. These bands that came along later, they helped us in the market because they made mainstream some of the stuff that we were doing as kind of an underground or more underground kind of
Right.
a thing. Yeah. So they just expanded the entire market for that kind of music.
They really did. Talk to me just real quick about the songwriting process on your albums. Gordon does sort of everything, but I've always been one to say, well, you know what? That guitar riff and that bass line and that drum fill, those also are integral parts of songs. I mean, you take Aerosmith's Sweet Emotion and you go, well, okay, Steven Tyler wrote it, but take out what Tom Hamilton's doing on bass, you don't have the same song. So that's always been sort of my issue with songwriting. It's like anybody who's played on it or contributed to me deserves a cut. Um, and I'm not trying to have you throw Gordon under the bus or anything, but talk to me about that because you look at your records and it's Gordon, 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 Gordon. You go, yeah, but there's more than just Gordon there.
Well, he does. He comes with the basic song, or the idea for the song, and it's if you look at the musical content of the songs, it's usually there's, and even some of our best songs, like I think "Added Up" is probably our best song. It has two chords, and it goes on for about 6 minutes. So what are you going to do? You're not just going to monotonously play two chords over and over again in a static kind of way. So yeah, it's true that the rhythm section contributes a lot to the feel and the arrangements of it. Or in the case of Blister in the Sun, if you go to the ballpark, you hear the bass and the drums. And that's when people in the stands are going and this kind of stuff. So it is a big part of the sound. I agree with you. And you can hear what it is because Gordon's basically, when he plays on one of our records, if you just listen to his guitar and his voice, that's what he would do if he was playing solo. Like if he was in a coffee house like when
Right.
I met him and he was a solo performer. And everything else that you hear, like with the drums, the bass, or if we have other horns or things, that's what the other musicians contribute. So he's not like, I can imagine that some band leaders like Bruce Springsteen, he may tell the other guys what to do or give them a lot of ideas, but Gordon actually is very collaborative, and he doesn't come in with any preconceived ideas about how the songs have to sound.
Right.
And a really good example of that on Why Do Birds Sing is American Music, where he came in with, he was doing like dun, 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 do you want American music, do, 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 like Ramones style groove.
Right. I
And
love it.
then Victor, the drummer, was like, yeah, we got a lot of songs like this. Why don't we try it a different way? And then he came up with the idea of doing to shuffle kind of feel, which completely opened up the song to new interpretations.
Right.
And then when you listen to the things on the, especially on the recording, since we're talking about
The box
an
set.
album reissue,
Right.
there are all these little bits and pieces that there wouldn't have been space for if we stuck with that initial groove. So yeah, what's the basic song, and then what is the recording, and what is the actual impact of the song? It's heavily collaborative.
See, and that's what I've always said. So when you see just the one guy's name, you go, oh, lyrics are not a song. I mean, a song is the whole thing. So, let me just quickly talk to you about this reissue. You do, of course, have the live show. You've got some remixes, and you've got the alternative takes. How does that get put together? Is that you and the rest of the guys that sit down and go through the vaults and find this, or does the record company come to you and say, hey, we got this stuff. We're going to put it out. What do you think? What was the process to assemble this?
I don't think Victor had anything to do with this one.
Okay.
I don't think Gordon had much to do with it, but the record company decided that they wanted to put out that live, the live concert is basically the music that we did for a video that had already been, or DVD that had already been released.
Right.
So they had that, and they knew that they wanted that, but then they also sent a list of the outtakes and things that they had in the storage. Luckily, this stuff wasn't burned in that big fire that destroyed
with Universal,
so much
right?
Catalog, yeah. So they had some of those outtakes, which was great because I had forgotten about some of them, or I knew of some of them, but could not find. I was looking for some of the recordings, and I couldn't find them in our vaults. Some of them, I talked to Gordon about one of the songs, which was "Me and You," and he did not remember the song at all. And I sat down with the guitar and I sang it for him. And do you remember this song? He's like, I don't remember it. Luckily, Concord found that in the vault. So those are some of the things that ended up on the reissue. So that was an example of a record company kind of saving
the day
project, because they had stuff that we didn't even have.
And it's amazing. Just yesterday, John Bon Jovi said, we're putting out a box set. We found 50 songs that we had forgotten about. And I it's like, how do you forget about songs? Like, how does that happen? I guess you just write too many, or they're not good, or like, how do you forget that you wrote something? I don't get that.
Oh, it's a very hectic lifestyle, because
True.
In those days, like this is 1991, we were doing over 100 shows a year all over the world, and we didn't have time to think about stuff or keep diaries or any of that. So, and when we made a record, we would just say, okay, what are the best 12 or 13 songs? I think it's probably was a mistake, because we probably should have stuck with 10 songs on an album. But at the time when CDs came out, of course, everybody had the expanded time, and we all thought, oh, we can give the fans more. But really, nobody cares how long the album is. They just care about how good it is.
You know,
but
it's
still,
funny
we
you mention that, by the way, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I grew up in the '70s, and Aerosmith, albums were 28 minutes, and then we got to the CD time, and everybody suddenly was doing 15 songs, 17 songs, and I was sitting there as a fan going, "Wow, this is great." And then I would listen to it, and I was exhausted, and I'd go, "Ugh, enough already! No more Motley Crue. Shush."
yeah, there can be too much of a good thing. Or
Yes,
Tom Waits, like putting out 3 CDs. So you've got, I mean, Tom Waits is great, but I'm not going to listen to him for 4 hours straight.
exactly. So it's nice that we sort of dialed it back and found that sort of happy place. 50 minutes is good. That's enough. You know. The live show that's included in there. Talk to me about that, because of course I grew up with MTV and Much Music in Canada, and we all saw Blister in the Sun, and we saw a couple of the other stuff. But you weren't a video band; that wasn't really your thing. The live show was your thing, or at least that's how I perceive it. How important is the live show to what the Femmes do, or les Femmes as we say in Quebec, and just how important is it to now have that represented on the reissue?
Well, live is our thing.
Yeah.
That particular show it was preordained that we were going to film that show. And what happened was it was literally 130 degrees on stage. So I'm still, when I think about it,
You're still
a little
suffering.
bit traumatized by doing that gig because it was a feat of endurance. But the band is very professional, so it still sounds good. And if you watch the video, it looks like we're just having fun.
Looks like you're
But
on
it was
fire,
a
literally.
lot of work. It's interesting that you mentioned Much Music because I've been looking all over the internet because they have a lot of footage of us. If it's
Hmm.
in their archives, they have footage of us playing live, but not live concerts. But they probably have that too. But they have other footage that we did in the studio or that we did in the art museum and interesting stuff, which I haven't been able to locate. But
Okay. Maybe I
maybe
can
there
help
would
you with
be
it, because
more.
they're relaunching Much Music as a video channel and getting rid of the whole lifestyle channel thing. So
Um,
who
Well,
knows?
somebody should look through their archives and see what they can find of us, because I remember doing interesting things with them that I've never seen again. But if
Yeah,
it's archived, it would be worth releasing.
yeah. Much Music was great, and not to be Canadian for a second, but MTV was very very much about the commercial and getting very commercial music, and Much Music was very different, where it just wanted to show music and an artist, and the Canadian bands weren't big glamorous bands, so it was sort of a blue collar TV channel, if that makes sense to you. You
Well, it
know,
was more about the music than MTV. That's one of the reasons why we liked going on Much Music. Well, they would show our videos, but then we would also do live little, 3 or 4 song live performances, which is much more interesting.
uh, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I never saw the band as being this one that wanted to have this crass commercialism. And then when you get to the album Birds, you do Culture Club. Do you really want to hurt me? Which of course was, you know, commercialism at its fullest. Talk to me about that decision and your version, because it's not a straight up cover. It's very interesting, and it's just like, wait a minute, Culture Club, really?
Well, that was Michael Beinhorn, the producer,
Yeah.
who suggested that we give that a shot. And I think, well, he had produced Chili Peppers,
Mm-hmm.
and what did they do? Higher Ground, or what was it called? Stevie Wonder's song that was a big hit for them, right?
Higher Love.
Yeah.
Higher Love. Yeah, I think that's the one. You don't want to hear me
Anyway,
sing, though.
he had a hit with
You don't want to
a
hear me
cover,
sing.
so
Right.
he probably thought this is a good strategy and suggested that, which we're willing to experiment and take on an experimental process with anything. We've done a lot of covers over the years, usually for compilation albums or for tribute albums, but sometimes we do it because we want to or because someone else suggests it. In this case, he suggested that song, and we did it as an experiment. Gordon could not relate to the lyrics of the song the way they were, so he rewrote some of
Yeah.
the stuff. It's not a complete rewrite, but let's say it's a revision. So he was happy because he had stuff coming out of his mouth that he could tolerate.
Right. Get into.
And then we just took it as a musical opportunity to do tripped out, psychedelic, weird. I mean, we didn't think it was commercial. We thought it was pretty neo psychedelic. And like there's 12-string guitar all over it, bouzouki, and I think there's the mellotron. And, like we just thought, let's have fun with this.
Right.
And I think that comes across. And Boy George liked our version a lot. He told us that he liked it. So I thought it was it wasn't a crassly commercial move. It was more like an experiment that turned out well and that we put it on the record.
Yeah. And it's fun to listen to. And of course, well, in fact, let me talk to you about working with Michael, because he has, and by the way, the song was Higher Ground. I just looked it up. Talk to me about working with Michael, because what he's done for Red Hot Chili Peppers and those other bands, he's really established a sound. He's really given them a direction. He's been terrific for them. He's sort of like, the Red Hot Chili Peppers Mutt Lange or Kiss's Bob Ezrin. What did he do for you? Did he come in there and say, this is my vision and how this goes, or was it collaborative? Talk to me about working with him.
No, it was the opposite, really, because he knew that the record company Slash and Warner's had previously attempted to subvert the band's sound and make it more commercial. They would always say, oh, wow, Talking Heads are really popular. Why don't you try to be like the Talking Heads? That's one of the reasons why Jerry Harrison produced one of our records. And then they say, you too, can you try to sound like them? And we're like, not really. Well, REM is really popular. Are they friends of yours? Yeah, but we don't want to sound like them. And so he knew that we had this traumatic history, but he actually really liked the way the band sounds, like the real Femmes sound.
Right.
So he did not try to mold us in his own image, which was a good approach. In the end, there was some production on there that, like, you can hear on American Music. Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? Used to Be. Some of the songs have added production, which added sophistication that Michael contributed to. Some of it is just really raw, like the Femmes always sounded live, and he had the common sense not to try to put lipstick on a pig. And it was a good collaboration.
Is that how you approach the recording process, where you really want to be sort of live off the floor and not be one of these Pro Tool, auto-tuned, pitch corrected, all that nonsense? You just want to be the guys on the floor recording and let's go. Is that how, for example, how Why Do Birds Sing, was that how it was put together?
Yeah, it was all the pre-production was just playing live in a room. We didn't cut anything to a click, I don't think. I doubt that we did. Let me think. No, it was live. It was the basic tracks for live. Some of the songs, the whole thing was live.
That's the way.
And then other ones have select overdubs, but just adding to what's already on the live track. So, yeah, that's our approach. We don't really consider ourselves like a pop crafts
band.
So
when you do Hotel Last Resort and you have all the new modern technology available to you, you're still doing it in your style, that live thing.
That album was all live except the actual title track, which we built in the studio. But just to show how perverse we are, the basic rhythm of that was from a drum machine from the 1940s.
Oh wow. Way
The
before the
studio had
Fairlight.
a drum machine from the 1940s, which was, we didn't even know that they had drum machines back then. So we used that as I don't think you hear it on the recording, but that's what then Gordon overdubbed his stuff on top of that. Then I overdubbed. So that was, and then Tom Verlaine came in with the guitar. So that was constructed in the studio, but the rest of the album was recorded live.
See, that's the way it should be. Let me just quickly touch upon your relationship with Gordon, because there was sort of that strange situation with the Wendy's commercial and the lawsuit. No, we don't have to get into it. The story's been told a million times, but have you had a chance to repair that, or do you sort of just go tour and do albums because that's the job and we get on with it, or are you able to be friends and a band again and say, hey, whatever, it was 20 years ago, forget it?
That was a long time ago, and we had, I guess, about 7 years when we didn't work together.
Right.
And it was actually Coachella
Yep.
asking us to reform and play at Coachella, which made us both think, do we want to do this again? And we both saw reasons to do it,
Mm-hmm.
just to see how things would go. And since then, things have been very amicable, and yeah, we get along fine, and we haven't had major conflicts like that. We still have some discussions about what
Right.
to do next, or how do we do this, but it's not problematic like it had been in the past. So yeah, we got over it.
Yeah, I mean, as we get older, we move on. But I do want to ask you, not about the Wendy's commercial, but songs have been used of yours in soundtracks, like Blister goes into Grosse Point Blank. What is the difference between putting it in a soundtrack and putting it on a 30-second commercial? Where is that line where you go, that's fine, that's meh? Where's that delineation for you, and why is there one?
Well, that was the problem with me and Gordon, is that we had different philosophy about that.
Right.
To me, the song the song has a lot of meaning to people, whether it's
Yeah.
Blister in the Sun, or like I heard, what was it? I think it was the Stooges were on some sort of a commercial, but it wasn't as bad as a burger commercial, but it was still a commercial, and I was confused by it. Maybe I'm a hippie, maybe I'm old school or something, but to me it's just confusing. Whereas if it's in a movie, that's realistic.
Gotcha.
Like we had Color Me Once in The Crow, and that was because somebody turned on the car radio, and there we were on the radio. This is realistic.
Okay.
So it depends. I mean, now I think a lot of bands will do anything to make money, but I mean, what would be next? Viagra commercial? Why can't I get just one fuck? It's like, you don't want people thinking in those terms.
No, but I do want to take you up on that for just 1 second, because bands are doing all kinds of stuff for money now. But is that just because the landscape has changed? I mean, if you're in the '60s or '70s, you put out an album, you go on tour for 2, 3 years, you sell the T-shirts, you sell the merch, you come home, and then you sit home for 6 months, and then you start all over again. We're not really in that situation anymore, because YouTube and Spotify has so watered down the base that it's hard to find a band. It's hard to latch on to somebody new. So how do you sort of keep it viable? Because I mean, you don't want to be doing a tour and then have to go home and be a landscaper.
Well, I do a day job. I do another job, and
Oh,
I'm a curator at a museum
oh,
in
great.
Australia,
Oh,
and I'm doing that work out here on the road. I'm talking to my staff every day, and yeah. So
oh wow.
actually, it's I thought it was I mean, it's a very satisfying job also, and very artistic, and it's still in the
Hmm.
creative field. But and I don't see any reason not to do both things.
Oh, that's great. Just real quick, 'cause
You
I
know,
didn't.
landscaping, like for example, with the Minutemen,
Yeah,
George Hurley, the drummer, he would always, like in between tours, he would go work construction.
really.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
So there's
I know the.
nothing wrong with working.
No, I know the lead singer of Accept comes home and is a professional electrician, and it's just going, oh, okay. Um, what kind of museum are you curating, I should say? Is it like the Picassos and stuff, or is it wild animals? What? Because I'm.
It's called Mona, Museum of Old and New Art in
Oh,
Tasmania, and it's the largest private museum in the Southern Hemisphere.
oh wow.
It's mostly contemporary art, and also I run a huge music program. Like we have two or three, sometimes four venues going in the museum every day with live music
Oh wow.
plus festivals. It's a massive job and it's a lot of fun.
Are you artistic in that sense too? Do you paint and do you do all that stuff as well?
I did one of the album covers for the Femmes Freak Magnet.
Oh, that's great. One thing I pulled out when I was doing the research here, it says that you play the sahu or the saku hachi, a Japanese bamboo flute. And first time I've ever heard that word and that name. Uh, how does one pick up the bamboo flute expertise? Was that something that your mom sort of said, "Hey, you can play piano or bamboo flute"? And you know,
My mom still doesn't understand that.
it's great
But
though.
I picked it up when I was living in New York City, and it's related to Buddhism. So I was doing meditation, and then I heard that there was this instrument that they use for the Zen meditation in Japan. And I thought, yeah, maybe I should gravitate towards a musical instrument form of meditation since I am a musician. And it actually worked out that way.
Oh, that's great. And of course, we'll remind everybody that Why Do Birds Sing? The deluxe edition is out October 8th, which is, well, in fact, tomorrow. And there we go.
Fantastic.
Merci, Brian, as we say in Montreal. That was great. Thank you. And I have to say, when I first heard Blister in the Sun years ago, that piqued my ears and my interest. And it was a pleasure to talk to you today.
Pleasure was mine. And I hope we get back to Canada next year.
Yes, please. I would love to see you in Montreal and or Ottawa, and let's get some. Let's do another one of these. And thank you for your time today. Absolutely appreciate it.
All right. See ya.
Cheers. All right, perfect. Let me stop the recording.